Back to the top story, we're watching the threat of potential terror attacks on American soil. Law enforcement is on high alert across the nation and is ramping up security efforts to protect Americans.
Joining us now from Washington is Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. He's a senior military fellow at the London Center for Policy Research. Colonel, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me. Good to be on.
Colonel, you've had years of experience as an intelligence officer. Where do you think the biggest threat leading up to the 4th of July is?
Well, that's a big question. Well, we saw yesterday what happened with an overreaction at the Navy Yard. I think everybody has to be concerned about individuals taking this their ISIS essentially recruitment seriously and doing something. I don't believe for a minute we're going to have a catastrophic 9/11 type attack. ISIS has just not developed sufficiently their networks to do that. With that said, we've already seen in France, in Australia, in a number of countries in the Middle East, these one-of lone wolf attacks, to include the Draw Muhammad event in Texas. So I think we all have to be vigilant, and I agree. I've been talking to my friends here in Washington, Vlad, and they all say we can't be everywhere. We police, we intelligence officers can't be everywhere. It's going to come down to the individual citizen being vigilant, trying to spot something before it happens, if we have any hope of preventing any great attack from happening.
Mm-hmm. We keep hearing, if you see something, say something.
Right.
So, Colonel, there have been about a dozen ISIS-related arrests in the United States so far. How likely is a lone wolf attack?
Meg, it's very likely. Again, we had the lone wolf attack in Texas. James Comey, FBI director, has been very out front on this. He has said that any given day they're tracking about 100 individuals. Right now, Meg, they've probably locked up about half those folks on minor charges just to make sure that they cannot do something. And the concern is this. In the past, Al-Qaeda, it took some time for individuals who they were watching in Al-Qaeda to become essentially violent. That flash to bang, the time it takes from them to be kind of seduced to action, has been greatly reduced. I think it's because ISIS is seen as a strong horse. They're making gains, and I think the more psychologically ISIS has an edge globally, the more likely you see individual lone wolves to act here locally.
And Colonel, I'm just curious.
Sure.
People these terror threats that come out around these holidays, it would seem to me for somebody who wanted to attack the United States that this would probably not be the day that you'd want to do that, just because there is such a significant military presence around all of our all of the things that that we hold dear, from the New World Trade Center to monuments in Washington. So I wonder if perhaps somebody who's thinking of doing something like this would take it to do it on a day when we're not so vigilant.
That's an excellent question, and if terrorists thought like you, we wouldn't have this problem. Now, I think this is where the issue becomes. These folks, when they decide to act, no, they're dead. It's like a suicide mission, and what better than to go right into the strength to die? And that's what we're talking about. Secondly, symbology. Let's remember that we're a year into the declared war of ISIS against us, since the al-Baghdadi declared war. So, and of course, the 4th of July. So they really do seek to hit us on events of significance regarding dates. So I think, as much as you and I would think logically through this, if we were doing it, they don't think in the terms we do.
Colonel, what's the single most important thing that security forces need to do to keep Americans safe this weekend?
Good question. Don't overreact. I think as you ran the B-roll on the attack yesterday. Look, we saw a street full of cars. If I were ISIS, I watched that. I learned a lot about how to basically do something over here and then do something completely across town somewhere else. So we have to not overreact. We have to be able to discern rapidly what's real, what's not, and then, for goodness sake, listen to what citizens say when they observe something, because, again, you and I, citizens on the street, are going to be the best early warning against these sorts of attacks at this point in time.
Absolutely. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer in Washington for us. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.